and maybe with some justification. So I resent a memo today. I believe Mr. Ellis might have sent it out, that if they were over the 3.5% threshold, to come prepared to discuss where we might be able to make some cuts. This is a very difficult and challenging budget year, which all of them are challenging, but this is particularly challenging. And we have to realize that many, many people have not recovered from the pandemic. We know that we're facing 8.5% inflation. We also know that rents are going up. Gas is starting to come down, but it's still a lot higher than it was. So every commodity that people are going to be looking for out there is going to be more expensive. If we raise taxes to a degree that is unsustainable, people may not be able to make their taxes, maybe not be able to pay them, and may have to consider moving out of Norwalk. Rents have increased. We have people that are living on a fixed income, probably paid off their mortgage a long time ago, and now their main expense are taxes for the city of Norwalk. We know that, unfortunately, taxes are the vast majority of the city revenue, perhaps 90 to 92%. And unfortunately, in the state, that's how we have to raise revenue in order to pay for services. And I've said it many times, property taxes, it's a regressive tax. I call it income and profit blind, because if you don't have an income or your company's not making a profit, your taxes are still due. So I would challenge the state of Connecticut to find a better way of taxation so that we don't have to be so heavily taxing our citizens and our residents. Now, coupling that, we also know that we have a great school system that we have funded probably to a greater degree than over the past 10 years than any other previous administration. But their expenses go up as well. So we're challenged with the Board of Education budget and the city side budget. And it's not an easy thing that we have to deal with, but that's what the cards are. Those are the cards we hold. And I do want to thank the members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation for their willingness to serve, for their willingness to make the hard decisions that need to be made. And I also want to thank the department heads for the most part, coming in under budget, doing a great job of living within the means that we have given them. But I also know that it's time, like I said, to make some of those hard decisions that we've been charged to make. So again, thank you, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And what I'd like to potentially
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
This is Troy, real quick. Could you summarize what happened last night, Mayor or Tom, just for everyone so we all know where we're standing here with how the vote went and where we are exactly with the cap? Thank you.
Well, I'll give Tom the floor on that. Last night, there were several votes that went before the Common Council. There were a vote on my original 4% recommendation. There was a vote to increase my recommendation by 3 million. There was a vote to decrease my recommendation by 3 million. And at the end, there was a vote that did pass to increase my recommendation by 1 million. Now, we know that the increase in the 1 million, it's up to the Board of Estimate and Taxation to determine where that goes. Doesn't necessarily go to any one department. But Tom, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, or Henry.
Yeah, I mean, you said perfectly. First rounds of votes, none were close. The final one, after a brief recess, came back with $1 million over. But just from my observations on social media, there's a fair amount of folks out there who think that's automatically going to the Board of Education, but that's not the process. That may end up happening, but it's not a definite. That's what we're here to talk about over the next few weeks on all the individual department level requests. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Although it took about 3.5 hours to get to that point. Anything else on your side, Henry?
No, I can't add much. I think everyone took their responsibilities very seriously. There were different proposals, different votes, nothing carried. There was a brief intermission or just a pause. And then they ended up approving the mayor's recommended budget plus additional $1 million spending. So the spending cap is $1 million more than we had recommended on February 7th. I think everyone I read about says this has been the toughest budget season that they've seen. I think, Mayor, you said it in the 10 years that you've been mayor. So it's just very serious and people are focused on it, and we appreciate the fact that you are all volunteers and you're giving of your time, diligently reviewing the materials, asking good questions, and making the tough decisions. So glad to help you, give you any information you need from finance department to help you make good decisions. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
just so you know, my position tonight and going forward is to try to cut on the city side wherever we can, wherever, to put it in the words of Jen McMurray, there are needs, things that the departments absolutely need. There are things that they may want, but maybe this is not the year that we can grant the wants. We have to be very responsible. We have to keep the budget as low as we possibly can, because right now, for the most part, in every district, I think we're over 3%. And in the 6th district, we're approaching 6%. Those raises, those price increases or tax increases are not sustainable. So we have to make the tough decisions tonight and going forward to see where we may be able to cut some of the wants that might not be the right thing for this year.
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. And I'll remind us as a board that even though the cap was set $1 million above the recommendation, we do not have to spend it all. We cannot go above that number, but we can certainly come in below that number. All right. With that said, any other opening remarks before we get to any of the departmental reviews?
I'm just
Go
a
ahead,
second. I'm just, did I mishear you? You said that it's $7 million over the.
1 million.
The million,
1 million.
right. That's right. That's what I understood.
Yes. Okay. With that said, what I'd like to suggest from each one of the department heads is maybe you start with your bottom line number. We have all the line item detail, but maybe let's start with the bottom line where the department's coming in versus its requested budget. And then we can go to the line item detail in each one of the areas, if that makes sense to everyone else. So let's start with the mayor's budget, please.
Okay, let me share my screen.
Well, as you can see, the mayor's budget, we have mainly salaries and the addition of the new equity and inclusion DEI officer, a person that has been hired to look at the equity and inclusion and diversity in the city of Norwalk and help us to make sure that we're being inclusive and equitable in all phases of our operation.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may jump in just for a second. It's a significant reduction for your department, and that's mainly because the DEI officer, who is on board now, is within your organization. Starting on July 1st, he will be moving over to her own unique organization. So you're going to see a big drop here. We will get to the DEI organization shortly, and you'll see a corresponding increase.
Yeah, and let's put a little, I do have a question about that when we get to it, Tom, because the inside the DEI budget, it's a little bit higher than what we're transferring out of the mayor's budget, but we can talk to that when we get to the DEI budget.
Okay.
Any questions from? Yes,
Yeah,
Ann.
I had 2 questions. One, so on an apples to apples, if you take out the DEI officer, what is the increase in the overall budget? Is it within the 3.5%? I presume so.
See, I don't have the totals right here, but yeah, it'd be basically the salary, the step increases for the salaries and the contractual increases. And we also provided the DEI department with about $16,000 worth of startup costs. That's for training and education and business expense as well. So it is, overall, it's a slight increase, but I would say less than $10,000.
I'm sorry, I think Ann's question was about the mayor's budget, and Ann, yes, it's only the wage and salary increase, which is the amount that
Oh.
he's projected to get. And so, as you can see from the screen, there's no other increases in the mayor's budget.
Apologies, I
Understood.
misunderstood.
Right. Everything else is flat year to year.
Right.
And I assume the telephone budget here is for the whole mayor's office, including chief of staff, city clerk, and others?
That's correct.
No, that's
No.
not,
Sorry,
we have
come on.
another one for, we have another
There's- yeah.
one for,
Chief of staff.
chief of staff.
Sorry.
Okay.
Under city clerk.
Okay. Any other questions here?
Yes, I have a question, Ed. What can, Mr. Mayor, could you explain what business expense is? And I know I'm going to answer this question a number of times tonight. I'm just a little concerned, and I don't want to nickel and dime things, but if I look at business expense in the package that we have tonight, we have $131,000 of business expense. I would like to know what that is. It's one of these things that's small. It appears, inconsequential when you look at the entire budget for that particular department. But when we start adding them all up, $131,000, and there is one in there from HR that's about $60,000. I'd like to know a little bit more about that because quite honestly, as you said at the very beginning, we've got to be this can be very painful, but I think we've got to do some tough love here and find out exactly what these expenses are and lower them as best we can possibly can.
I don't disagree. Lisa, you want to talk about those business expenses in our office?
Sure. As Mr. Fair pointed out, the amount for the business expenses is pretty small. And what we use those for are unintended expenses that come up. They could be something like having to buy subscription services for software packages. We have a subscription to the Norwalk Hour. Sometimes you have to pay to use different websites that we're using for to conduct business. The other place where it comes up sometimes is if we need to use space, if we need to rent any kind of equipment. I mean, it's usually very small expenses that are here and there. What we could do is get you guys an accounting of what we spent it on last year, and maybe we can follow up with that.
Okay, so Louis, I think what we're saying here is that it's kind of a catch-all. It could be a contingency almost. Is it possible though we could cut that back?
Well,
I
we're
mean, we do
talking, from what I can see, it's $6,204. Is that the line you're
Exactly.
referring to?
Yeah, it's $6,000. So why don't we make it $3,000? And if it's to rent other utility services, or it's for dues, or it's for subscriptions or something like that, we've got other categories that take care of those things. So I guess what I'm doing is I'm just trying to wring out the sponge here so that we get as much as we possibly can out of it. And excuse me for just picking some small ones, but I think if we take a look at all of them in aggregate, it can come to real money.
Well, I was looking at the FY22 actual, and it was 8,302. Now, I have no problem cutting back on the 6,204. I would suggest maybe 5. But obviously, if there is there a need for a special appropriation during the year, we'd have to come back for that. But I'm looking at FY22, and there's the actual expenditures were 8,303.
And I don't mean to quibble over this because these aren't big numbers at all. But I think just in the spirit of trying to squeeze out as much as we can. I mean, this is also, we're setting an example for the rest of the, and not for the rest of the department, but to show the public what we're really trying to do here.
Yeah, I have no problem cutting that back to 4.
That's great. I think that shows a lot of initiative on your part, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the mayor's budget? All right, let's move to chief of staff then.
Okay. Chief of Staff division is made up of a number of different departments, Chief of Staff, City Clerk, Customer Service, Communications and Grants. So I subtotal this at the division level down at the bottom. So if you want to start with the bottom line, slide it over so you can see the recommend versus the approved and the corresponding percentage.
So I'm
Yeah.
happy to address that. So as you can see, my department is over the 3%, and the primary driver of that is the requested addition of a webmaster. One of the things that our department did, and we encourage all the other departments to do, is to pay really close attention to the results of the efficiency study that we got last year. So you'll see a few of the recommendations from the efficiency study reflected in the chief of staff budget. The 3 main recommendations that they had was to bring customer service under the communications director. The communications department previously had a supervisor and 2 customer service agents, and they recommended reducing the position of customer service manager down to a regular customer service representative, because they do need 3 people in there answering the phones, but to have the supervisor be the communications director. We hope to recoup some of the savings from downgrading that position to put towards a webmaster. It was something that was referenced throughout the entire efficiency study that the city really needs to do better, communicating with the public and making sure that information is accessible and easy to find. Up until this point, the responsibilities for the website have lived in the IT department, and they do a good job in terms of the back end, making sure that the website is up and running. But they're not communications experts. They have left the determination of what information will be on the website to individual departments. Some departments are better than others in terms of forming what their message should be. They also don't have any design skills. So there's been a bunch of requests that have come up from the council and from the public about things that they would like to see on our website that with our current setup, we have not been able to accomplish. An example of that is our website now is very much set up by department, not by content area. So for instance, if somebody was interested in knowing what is the city doing regarding sustainability, there's no place to go and see that all in one place. Same with other topics. So it was a big recommendation of the efficiency study to add a position of webmaster and to have that person report directly to the communications director. So that position, I believe, is about $79,000. So that's an addition to the budget. Also in the budget, the efficiency study recommended that we discontinue the practice of using couriers to deliver packets to council members prior to meetings. So we did do that. You will see that savings reflected in the city clerk's budget. Other than that, just another thing you might notice is we did change a few employees from one line item to another. We used to have 4 employees under the city clerk's office. We moved 2 of the administrative assistants from the city clerk's organization up into the chief of staff's organization. So you'll see a $49,000 decrease in city clerk and a similar increase in the chief of staff line item. Other than that, I don't think we had any significant changes.
So Louisa, is the difference in the chief of staff salary line from the 149 that transferred out of city clerk just normal raises, salary increases, benefit cost year to year? And is that the same in the difference between the webmaster cost you cited and the overall communications and grants, wages and salary line of 107?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Ed, if I may, just, this is a theme that we're gonna come across, throughout these discussions. One of the things that have not been done consistently, in salary increases, were the step increases. We were always really pretty solid with, the contractual increases, but not too consistent, on the step increases. So in many cases, depending on the experience level of the employee, they will get a step increase contractually negotiated, as well as the regular contract increase. So in some cases, it will be more than the regular 2.35%. So that is a contributing factor, though it varies depending on the division.
Okay, thank you, Tom. That's very helpful. Questions from others on the chief of staff budget?
Yes, I have a question which regards the webmaster. So if that expense is being added into the chief of staff's budget, is there a somewhat commensurate decrease in the IT budget where it's no longer residing?
No, there's not. And again, that was another thing that was pointed out in the efficiency study. There is a employee in the IT department who has responsibilities for the website, but he also has a tremendous workload in addition to that. And because of that, he was spending about 5% of his time on the website. So that was why they determined it really needed to have much more attention than that and somebody with a different skill set. But he still has a full workload without the web.
Understood. Thank you.
My only follow-up on that would be that if he was able to do whatever he had to do as a webmaster in addition to his normal responsibilities, does that really mean that we have to get another full-time employee? Could we not get a part-time employee? Could we not contract that webmaster out and have the full-time employee that we still have in IT take over technical responsibilities for that?
It depends on what you want the website to be like.
Do we have a design for that website now? I mean, do we know what it wants? Do we have a set of requirements and a plan for what it's going to look like?
Well, the person who gets brought on would play a very large role in designing what a new website would look like. So we haven't gotten that far down the road. The one thing that we do know is that because our website is so big and has so many different topic areas, the way that the city has done it in the past is that they assigned an individual in each department to be responsible for that department's web page. So each department was writing its own content, determining what the most important things were, determining what it should look like. There's not consistency across the departments. And basically because we farmed it out to the departments, there wasn't a centralized person who was driving the message and determining what should be on there. It is absolutely a full-time job to make sure that our website, if you have a person who is responsible for what is appearing on each page, making sure that it is up to date, that it's clear, that it's consistent from page to page, it's absolutely a full-time job.
Do you have anybody in mind for that position?
No, we don't.
What would the starting date be?
Hopefully July 1st.
So we're out recruiting for that position right now, Louisa?
We just completed a job description. We haven't posted it yet because it hasn't been approved in the budget.
Okay.
Could we delay that? Could we delay that till let's say January 1st?
Potentially.
Yeah, this is one of the things that the efficiency study highly recommended. I made it clear from the beginning when we started the efficiency study, that doesn't necessarily mean cutting expenditures. It means just doing things more efficiently, more effectively. And I think they did a really, really good job. We certainly could wait and hiring the webmaster. It doesn't have to happen July 1st. It would be nice if it did. But also, one of the things they found, believe it or not, that the city is understaffed in many areas. And we don't want to remedy that right away because the cost would be prohibitive. But they said that the city really, cities of comparable size, the city of Norwalk is understaffed. And we recognize that. But I think because we have such good people in the right place, that we don't feel it as much as we could have if we didn't have those people doing their job.
Mhm.
So I mean,
I
clearly,
agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%, but I'm just looking as deep as I possibly can to avoid some expense. I mean, these are things that we would like to have, but we don't have the money to do it right now.
I'll just make one
So-
more pitch for it before we move on to the next departments, which is just that it really is critical that we're able to be transparent and to communicate with the public. We do so much of our information sharing through the website and by directing people to the website, particularly as there is a decline in print media. I mean, it's really the way that people in this city find out information that is vitally important to them. And the efficiency study had a lot of recommendations in it. They highlighted this as one of the most important things in the entire study in terms of this being a well-functioning city where residents are able to access the information that they need in their daily lives. So can it wait a little till mid-year to hire? Potentially. We've been going for the last however many years without it, but it really is a very important one.
And
So,
Alicia, I would agree with that comment that, this is the face of the city. I understand your point very well, Jim. I think we can put a star by this as we go
Right.
through our whole process. And if we come back at the end and say, hey, look, there's more that we need to save, that's an option. But for right now, I just kind of asterisk it and come back to it as we get through the whole process, if that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good approach.
I agree with you. Let's put it down now, and then we can put it on our list of things to address when we add everything up.
Thank you, Jim.
All right,
If-
so at the final meeting, which is Monday, 27th, I believe, the 20th. Regardless, we go over the open items. So I should consider this open item number 1.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, we also have the business expense is going to come down $2,000 too.
Well,
Yep.
it sounded like the mayor was in agreement with that.
No,
so
we could drop
Yeah.
that to 4.
We can drop it to
Yeah,
4.
that
Not a
one
problem.
to me was closed.
Yep.
That was closed. We agreed on that. This
Okay.
this one is open. Okay, so we move to
If I-
D.
If I could
Yep.
add something. to
I'm
the
sorry,
revenue.
sure.
Given that as a client or a customer, and we pay very high taxes, I think having the best customer experience and interacting with City Hall is highly recommended so that people feel as if they're getting their money's worth, so to speak. However, on the expenditure, one thing I would query is whether or not that individual, when they come on, could initially come on as a 1099, as a contract worker, so we don't have the additional benefits expense. And then if that person is really the person, then they can come on as an FTE. That is just one suggestion.
Even better suggestion.
We will explore that possibility. As I said, we're looking to cut and save wherever we can. And that's one of the possibilities that we might be able to take advantage of.
Okay, so
But it is, I think, an important thing that the city does have a better website.
I think we're all in agreement. It's an open item. There's a few good suggestions. I just want to keep us moving if you don't mind.
Okay, I have one more nitpicky thing. Typing services. I realize that when we add up all the typing service in this package that we have $10,000 worth of typing services. My suggestion is that, and this includes chief of staff, the Corporation Counsel, HR, admin, in the police department and the fire department. Is there, I don't know, I never saw the efficiency study, but I would think that in something like this, that maybe we could consolidate that someplace, that possibly there's another department within the city that could consolidate all these typing duties. And I would certainly think that we could do it for less than $10,000. And we're just talking about these particular items. So I don't think it's anything that we should really get too excited about tonight. But I think that going forward, that we should take a look at the possibility of taking a lot of these little things and say, yeah, let's consolidate at someplace and have a centralized typing pool for the city. Okay?
Jim, if I could just remind you, the typing that you're counting up on these sheets is just the departments we're reviewing tonight. We'll probably see them over the course of the next week in the remaining meetings.
Yeah.
Right. No, I think Jim's comment is fair and legitimate to say it's not, may not be the expense, but have we put a center of excellence, for lack of a better term, together to handle all of the typing requests across the city? And is there any efficiency associated with that? Something to look at that is in parallel, I think, to the budget approval process.
Tom, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that those are Telesco's services, which are
Right, that's exactly what they are.
that takes the minutes at
Right.
the public meetings. And I
Yeah.
believe we do have one contract with Telesco that is centralized and managed through the city clerk's office, but we bill it by department that uses it.
That's okay. Fine.
Okay, that's food for another conversation, I think. As far as charging back expenses that are billed centrally. But let's put that off to another day.
Okay. Anything
If-
else for Chief of Staff?
I just want to make one comment, and I was remiss in the beginning. We have a new member of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, Mr. Kendrick Constant, and I want to welcome him aboard as well.
Sorry about that. Kendrick, welcome to the team. All right. Shall we move to DEI then, please?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if it's possible, this is Mario Capola, Corporation Counsel. I had asked the budget director prior to the meeting if it was possible to please move the Corporation Council's budget up a little bit. I have another hearing at 7:30 that I have to move to. Is it possible to move to the Corporation Council next?
I have no objection. Anybody else have a problem with that?
Nope.
Okay,
Thank you.
then let's go to Corporation Council.
Sorry, Mario, I thought the pacing would be a little bit quicker, but no problem. So right down here, we've got Corporation Council total. So their request was, request was 1.835 million here. Recommendation, 1.7 million, $88,000 reduction. And basically you can see that is almost entirely in the other professional services line, which is what they use for outside counsel. Take it from there, Mario.
With regard to this budget, I would just try to keep our presentation short and sweet. In previous years, we've attempted to reduce staff. For example, reduce about 1/3 of our staff, not our attorneys, but the actual staff we have supporting the attorneys. At one point, we were asked to try to find a way to reduce our budget. We are down to literally a bare bones budget. We've reviewed it, and there's really nowhere to cut. The services that are provided here are services that are necessary for us to conduct our business. The outside professional services budget covers all litigation costs, including, for example, with tax appeals, in other cases, all of the expert witnesses that we have to retain on behalf of the city. So, you know, we're really I can't recommend any change, any further reductions. We're doing the best we can with the staff that we have. Quite frankly, we're overworked. I know other departments may say that, but I'm teetering on, really being unfair to, quite frankly, the attorneys in the office, some of which are just working incredible hours, and I would assume higher than is the case for attorneys in other municipal in-house departments throughout the state. So the good news is that, I think we're very effective in the work we do. And if you look at us comparatively with other municipal in-house departments with similar caseloads, we're substantially undersized and our budget is substantially smaller.
Mario, just so I understand you properly, you're saying that on the other professional services, you really can't see your way of coming down from the $450,000 requested, even though that's a $150,000 increase year to year. Is that what you're saying? I don't mean to.
No, actually, I appreciate you asking that clarification. I was referencing the 300,000 number.
Okay, so you're willing to take the $300,000 number?
With the understanding that if we have to come back, we have to come back. I can't predict with any certainty what costs will end up being in litigation, but the number we recommended, we thought was the right, gave us enough in the budget to cover anticipated costs. We could go with a lower number, cross our fingers, and come back to you if we need additional funding.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would think that's a smarter way to deal with things, and then we can deal with any unforeseen things out of contingency as the year goes on.
Yeah, Ed.
How much more would you be able to come down, Mario?
I guess we could go to the 300,000. I wouldn't go any further than that, lower than that. If it's possible to go higher, above 300, I think it would be recommended, but at a minimum, I wouldn't go any lower than 300.
That's not what I had in mind. What is our actual so far to date this year?
One moment, please.
The one thing about the law department, we don't just do things. Oh, not we. They don't just do things for the city. A lot of their time is spent on cases and services to the Board of Education, and whatever lawsuit is brought by the Board of to the Board of Education. Usually, they also name the city of Norwalk, and we represent them in many cases, and so that's where the expenses come in. I can't see going below 300,000, and I think the idea or the appropriate idea right now is to say, look, if you need more later on, you'll have to come back and ask. And I think somebody mentioned contingency, and that's certainly what I would recommend.
Okay.
But I'm just asking the question: is that how much have we already spent this year? We're
yeah, I know Tom. Tom was looking at that number, but on the sheet you can see in 22 we spent 416,000.
Yeah, and through the mid-February we were at 139.
139.
Yeah.
Through February. So that's 60. That's almost 2/3 of the way through the year. Do you expect that we're going to do another 150,000 between now and the end of the year?
There's one particular case that could settle, and if not, trial starts in 3 weeks, and there'll be a substantial cost, which will eat up all of that. So that's the nature of the beast for us. So you got to have a budget in place to be able to perform, because you can't go into litigation not knowing that you have the funding to adequately put up a defense or to further litigation. So
in addition to that, I don't know if you can hear me, but in addition to that, we're having a reval coming up, and when we're talking about other professional services, that includes a lot of the different appraisals, et cetera. So we're going to be seeing another tidal wave of tax matters coming up. Mario can address that, but we're having another, disaster not disaster. We have another challenge on the horizon, I should say.
Thank you, Jeff.
We've
That was-
successfully navigated, we've successfully represented the city for cases from the 2018 revaluation cycle. There's still some that remain. We anticipate we'll have success again with the 23 revaluation cycle, but as Jeff pointed out, we expect to have at least a few hundred new lawsuits filed between April to June of 2023. There's just a relatively short window in which the cases could be filed to appeal decisions of the Board of Assessment Appeals pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 12117A. So we anticipate a significant number of new cases again between April and June of 23.
Yeah. So again, Mario, what
I'm gonna say
would-
April, I'm sorry, April, June of 24. I misspoke.
That's okay. Again, what I would like to suggest and look to the rest of the board to validate is, again, not to, I mean, to hamstring you, but not to totally incapacitate you. That we set that budget at $300,000 for the year. And then as additional needs come up, we can address that through contingency. That way you've got at least a base that's comparable to last year to start with, and you're not having to come back every single instance. But at the same time, it helps us reduce the overall city side expense.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions. In anticipation of the reval and additional potential lawsuits coming out of that, what have you seen historically in terms of the bump up as a percentage of the budget that you need to handle that? Because I would presume that you've got somewhat of a cyclical budget based upon that.
I don't know if Mario's left.
Mario's on mute at the moment. I
Okay.
don't know if he left us.
And
Jeff,
I-
do you have?
Sorry about that. Sorry, Ms. Yang, I missed you just for one moment there. The question, I unfortunately I lost you for 1 minute. If you could just please repeat the question.
Sure, it's the cyclicality of your budget based upon the reval process. So if we're coming up with a reval and you anticipate more lawsuits next year, then theoretically, we will see a higher budget, a disproportionately higher budget next year for your unit. And I'm just trying to understand what the ebb and flow looks like based upon the reval.
That's an excellent question. I anticipate significant costs in the, so we anticipate that the new appeals will come in for the 23 reval from April to June of 24. I anticipate that from a cost, for a cost perspective, the bulk of costs within our budget will the greatest need will come in the 24-25 budget. So I think that for this budget, if we go with the 300, we'll see how things go. We may have to come back. And then, for the 24-25 budget, I assume it would be higher based on what appeals we get, which I don't know yet because we haven't had the revaluation happen. So it's hard to predict at this juncture.
I have
But I think
one
that's
other-
but to answer your, but specifically, I think as far as the ebbs and flows of it, I would anticipate the most costs in the 24-25 budget for other professional services associated with the tax appeals.
As an estimate, do you think it's 300,000 or 500,000
As to when
for next year?
24, 25.
That you will
it's
need.
different, it's impossible for me to provide you with an estimate at this time. I'd have to see how many appeals we get filed with the Board of Assessment Appeals and what type of appeals we're getting, and then I'll have a better next spring when we're in this budget process next year. I'll be able to give a better response, a more accurate response. At this point, it's impossible for me to know because I just don't know how many appeals we're going to have.
And one final question, and this could be for another meeting, but if you could at some point in time go through with the board contingent lawsuits or contingent liabilities. I remember when I was on the board past, there was a settlement of a lawsuit that was pretty significant. but it was based upon a lawsuit that was maybe a decade or 15 years old. So a little bit of a black swan. So the question would be is what do you see as a potential pipeline where we may have an unanticipated settlement cost that is not budgeted? So that could be something that we talk about at a later meeting, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to mention
In
that.
and just to be clear, that would be a discussion that would take place in executive session.
Understand.
So that's a fair point, and let's get it on the docket for one of our regular meetings in executive session. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for the corporate counsel? Okay, Mario, Jeff, thank you very much.
Thanks for taking us out of order. It's much appreciated.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Not a problem. Okay. Now should we jump back to, before I go back to DEI, is there anybody else who had a time request that we didn't know about? Or can we do the rest of this in order? Silence means in order. So let's go back to DEI.
Okay, as mentioned earlier, DEI will be a new organization starting July 1st. The vast majority of the funding is in the salary line, which came out of the mayor's department. Total request is $149,000, no comparative, so can't tell on a percentage basis. But as I said earlier, some startup costs for training and education and business expense.
Okay. And then Tom, my question from earlier, I'll ask here, because we transferred roughly 129,000 out of the mayor's budget for the headcount, and it's showing up here at 133. Is that simply just normal salary increases planned in for the year?
As mentioned before, the step increase and the regular contractual salary increase.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on DEI?
I do want to say one thing. Since we brought the DEI officer on, she has been remarkable in reaching out to the community, also reaching out to city staff. And one of the things I think we should highlight is the fact that recognizing that we have a very diverse community, she's arranging for Spanish lessons for all city employees who are interested in taking those classes. For conversational Spanish, for instance, and just some of the things that a city employee would need to know. So let's suppose that there's a fire, and a fire department responds. Firefighters need to be able to ask in Spanish, if necessary, if there's anybody else in the building and where they might be located. Same thing with a police officer. Police officer often responds to places where there's an armed adversary. Need to be able to ask, where might this person be? What kind of weapons do they have? Those kinds of things that increase the communications ability for not only public safety, but in day-to-day operations. And I want to give her a lot of credit for bringing that up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just one suggestion on the DEI officer. Perhaps they can work with the web person to enhance the content on the website, both from a DEI perspective, both from a multilingual perspective.
Good point, Ann. Thank you. All right, so we move to the legislative line items.
Yeah, this basically expenses set up for primarily the Common Council to handle some of their day-to-day activities. One item to note is on topic du jour, other professional services. As you know, we're going through a city charter rewrite. We have that task funded at $75,000, as you can see, for the revised 23 budget. In the event that we do not finish it in the current fiscal year, we are requesting and recommending $10,000 for fiscal 24 to wrap things up.
The silly small line item, but do we need to build it into the budget, or is that something we should just consider funding out of contingency if it rolls out of this fiscal year into next?
It's an option.
I mean, every penny counts, guys. I might suggest we look at doing that.
Yep, I agree.
Okay.
There's something else. Are we finished with that line?
I think so.
I'll
Do
take
we-
that, I'll take that down to zero, make the comment that contingency if needed.
Thank you.
Um,
Okay, Jim.
the other thing I just want to jump in retroactively here. I asked Tom for a head count to look at some of the head count that we have and where we've had some. Unfortunately, I couldn't print it out and I can't go back and dig that analysis out of my tablet here. Tom, could you just give us as we go through, if there is, just mention if there is any headcount increase in some of these departments as we go through?
Yeah, sure thing, Jim. The easy thing about tonight is the only one that applies was the webmaster, and we've already discussed that. The balance of
Okay.
the departments on the agenda do not have any headcount requests.
Okay.
But going
Thank you, Tom.
forward in the future meetings, I'll make certain of that.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks. That's helpful.
Shall we move to town clerk, please?
Clerk, Rick McQuaid could not make it this evening, but I can speak to this.
If Rick's not here, he gets the zero-based budget for next year. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
But as you can see down here, he came in at 3.41%. And I'll tell you, he and I worked very closely on this to get him under his 3.5% because he was traveling overseas during the thick of all the deadlines, but he still managed to pull it together. So nothing really out of the ordinary here on the salaries, 4.0%. Again, made up of steps and contractual increases, a few additions and a few subtractions. Nothing of any significance, nothing over, $3,000 in either direction. As I said, for a grand total of 3.41%.
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, I think we can even let him keep his $180 of business expense.
And
Any
he
other-
did not ask for any typing.
Any other questions or comments for the town clerk?
I have a question and a comment. One, I think the town clerk does a tremendous job. And as far as the city presenting to the public, it's a great face. The question here is the $80,000 on the IT services. Are those outsourced services?
I think we'll probably have to get that answer for you if Rick is not here.
Yeah, I don't know offhand.
I know the actual in FY '22 was 84,000, so it's a reduction, but I'm not sure. I believe that may be because they have to record a lot of things and add it into the database. So I'm not sure, but we'd have to check with Rick on that.
We'll get back.
There's one aspect to this. He gets all of the budgets and reports on candidates for any offices, anybody that's running. And it's a complicated, it's convoluted documentation that has to be submitted 4 or 5 times during the course of a campaign. And there's promises from the state that they're going to automate that at some point in time, but they've not done anything. And I wonder whether this $80,000 has anything to do with that. But I mean, that's a subject that we'd have to bring up with him.
So
It may-
let's make a note and we'll get
Right.
Rick to get back to us. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Shall we move to HR and personnel, please?
Okay, we have Tina. We have Tina. There she is. So overall, we'll go drop down to the bottom line here. Request of 993,000. We recommended 919,000. There's still a 25% increase over the 23 approved. There are some technological initiatives as well as some certification issues that Tina would like to have done, and I will let her take it from here.
Yeah. Tina, can you speak to some of these things, please? I mean, what jumps out right away is the IT services line jumping so dramatically year to year. What's driving it?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I know this is the first time I'll be presenting a budget to you, so a little nervous, but we'll get through this. So I just wanted to mention before I started that, so I started with the city in May of 2022. And the first thing I was basically handed from the mayor was the efficiency study. And so we've been really working hard to try and look and assess how the HR department supports the departments and the staff. So that was kind of the overall drive for many of the budget requests. So going directly to that, the IT services, one of the recommendations of the efficiency study, and quite frankly, that we've struggled with, is that we have an applicant tracking system. It's called NeoGov. That is the $13,000 that you see in the past. But it's very limited in what we can do after that. So what we did based on looking at what the efficiency study asked for, they actually recommended an additional person. But I do not believe that that assessment is correct. I think that it's our systems that need additional work, which will help with our efficiency and productivity. So we went to NeoGov. There are a number of different modules that we are asking to add. I obviously can, explain the one that I think is the most important for us is the onboarding. So we have something called Insight, which is our applicant tracking. If we were to add onboarding, what happens with that is that it greatly reduces our need to do data entry, our need to chase candidates for paperwork, and really kind of help streamline the processes. So basically, through Insight, if we were to hit hire, that information will go right into the onboard. The candidate will then input all their information, so we're not worried about transposing social security numbers or any of that kind of stuff. And then it directly integrates with Munis. And so then the record in Munis is set up, and then the HR generalist just has to go in and clarify it. So it's really a huge time saver for us. It also helped, it's compliant. It was in recommendations, like I said, with the efficiency study, and it will really help, like I said, with some of the issues we're having with recruitment and retention, because our recruitment process, based on the amount of paperwork that we have and the time it takes to get the paperwork, sometimes gets so extended that we either lose a candidate or there's issues in the department. So that's the reason for that recommendation. Originally, we had asked for 115. It was reduced to 80. I did go back to NeoGov. I can do year one for about $58,000. The only issue with that will be that we would have to enter into a 3-year contract, and years 2 and 3 are not at $58,000. So I just want to be upfront with you. So I could do this year at $58,000, but not years 2 and 3.
And what would the years 2 and 3, what would the upcharge be on years 2 and 3?
Sure. Year 2 would be approximately $80,000, and then year 3 would be $120,000.
And if we spend the 80 now, do we have a license in perpetuity for the onboarding module?
No, so they only enter into a 3-year contract. So we would price fix for those 3 years, and then obviously we would have to go back out to them. But NeoGov is the system. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on your question.
No, so then for the onboarding module at 80K, that locks us into 80K a year for the next 3 years?
Yes.
And what were the accelerators you had before? 58 to 80 to
120.
Okay.
So again, we think to me, this increase in our systems to make us more productive and efficient negated the need, as I mentioned, for an additional FTE, which was part of the efficiency study, and would really help us be legally compliant and also to make sure that we were being confidential, that we weren't, papers weren't being passed around. And it would also help us start to go paperless, which is the other large expense that, we can talk about when we go down to business expenses, because that is what my business expense line item is.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what is the other $60,000 in business expenses for what?
Sure. So for one of the other recommendations in the efficiency study was that the HR department went paperless for several reasons. One being confidentiality to ensure. So if you were to come to the HR office, we're having an issue with space. We do not have enough space in our offices to house all personnel files. So there are boxes of part-time files and places. So we keep hiding them in our office so we can lock the door and things like that. So the $60,000 would be to be able to scan all active personnel files, both retiree and I say active, they're not all active employees, but we do have a number of retiree files that are open. It would be to scan all active files within the HR department. As I mentioned, it was a recommendation during the efficiency study. We didn't go out to bid, but what we did was we received 3 quotes. That's why we went with the $80,000 originally, because they were all kind of around that $75,000. But we can do it for $60,000. If there is an area to cut, obviously, and I know the mayor asked us to kind of look, this is something that I would put off. I would rather work on our systems and our onboarding and our candidate and employee experience than this expenditure. If you're asking me an area that, you know, I could push off to a different year.
So you're saying that you could put off that 60,000 in business expense?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take it.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, on the IT services, you're going to accept the 80,000, not the 115, just to close that up.
Yes, I obviously, you know, we have until June 30th to enter into an agreement, and it will have to go to legal and procurement and things like that. But that's, I've been holding them at that number for right now. I was waiting for the final recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question from me, and it's more just for educational purposes. Because they're so important. The employee assistance program year-to-year costs goes up pretty significantly. Again, employee assistance programs are critical, particularly in the times we live, but what's driving the increase?
Sure. So actually that's something, so at the time we submitted our budgets, we had information that, so I did not enter into this employee assistance contract. We use a vendor called KGA. We were under the impression that our contract expired this June of 2023. And so we increased it because we thought we were going to have to go out to bid. And we had kind of done a survey of the vendors, and that's why we brought it in at 30. Luckily, our contract is 1 additional year. So while there is a small increase, if I need to, we do not need to go out to bid yet. So I've already worked with Sharon Connors to worry about, we're going to worry about bid next year, because we do have 1 additional year on the contract.
So does that mean that 30 can come down to 16.4?
Yeah, I probably asked for 17 just to be safe for the small increase, but it can be reduced.
Okay, we'll take that one too.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Tina. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And again, I just want to, when we submitted our budget, there were some things we were not sure of. And as this has gone on, and obviously I understand that, you know, this is a really difficult process. I tried to look at it, obviously understanding the taxpayer burden, but also trying to support, you know, 635 employees, full-time employees with another 150 plus part-time. We really wanted to make sure that we provided them with the services and things that they needed. So that we kind of had this 2-pronged approach.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. very
Thank you.
much.
Tina, can I just ask, back to the business expense? We are suggesting taking away the 60,000. Prior to this year, you had about $756 in there. You want anything in there, or are we taking out the whole 60?
I mean, if I could get the 756 just to, in case, because truthfully, I don't know what that was made up of. The $60,000 we put in there was purely for the scanning project. So if I could get a very small amount just for, I'm not sure what that is made up of otherwise, I would appreciate it. But if not, we can find it somewhere else.
But I think that's an idea, you know, $756 could come out of contingency. You know, that seems like a specific amount, but, you know, I would leave it blank. And if you need the money, you come to us and we'll give it to you probably.
Okay, I'll take it to zero.
Probably.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for HR?
And I think
What was-
that's exactly what we're looking for, is somebody that's got, is conscientious about what the situation we're in today and is looking at the big picture rather than just what would be nice to have. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I
Thank
agree.
you.
That's what we talked about before, the needs versus the wants. You know, needs are absolute, wants nice to have, but maybe not now.
Yep.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. Let's move to the register of voters.
All right, I see Brian and Stuart waiting patiently. And here we are at the bottom line for registrar of voters. Request of 618,000, the recommended is the same. Overall increase of 6.6% over the 23 approved. And take it away, gents.
Well, we sent you an email with the information on early voting, which seems like it's happening. That's going to add some costs. Then again, the state may provide some money, or they may not. Nobody knows how many days, not clear. But we do have, of course, the election and then this fall and the presidential primary next spring to worry about. So, and then there'll be two more in 2024 with a regular primary for Congress and the like, and then the presidential election. And of course, we have 3 times as many people voting in a presidential election as in a municipal election currently. So it's pretty wide open. There might be some grant money around, and again, the legislature may, there's a bill that would prohibit us from accepting it. Probably wouldn't pass, but who knows?
Okay.
We try not to spend money we don't need to, but obviously everybody does that. But we end up with basically the state telling us what we have to do. The only real thing that we're not absolutely required to do is to send people a postcard. And we're now required to send things like that in English and Spanish. But we'd like to do it again this year because most likely early voting will be required. And we will have to tell them then, hours and times and get that out to let the public know about it. Probably something we really ought to do every year. But it's not the only thing pretty much on here that's not required.
Okay.
Is that the whole reason?
Excuse me, this 5421 business and office rentals. I think that was for St. Mary's. We don't use that anymore. So you can take that out. We are using the library now.
Say that again, please, Stuart. What number?
5421.
$900? Oh,
Not much, but we're not paying St. Mary's because we're not using St. Mary's anymore.
okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, the 8104, which is the printing and duplication, is that what you were just talking about with getting the word out to people? More
No,
post-
this would be a separate thing for sending everybody a postcard.
So
Some of
why
those
is,
printing things are ballots.
why is that up so significantly from 22?
I'm not sure. I can't.
It was 552 in 2022. And this year you're asking for 8,000.
I'm not sure. Maybe Brian knows. Brian?
You're on mute, Brian.
Yeah, that's your printing and duplication. Does it have to do with a election or early voting?
Ballots, maybe?
Well, ballots.
Last year we had reprint ballots, I remember.
Ballot printing will go up a little bit because we'll need more ballots Because if we have to have some for early voting and then can't use them for election day, we'll try to be able to use the same ballots. But if we need more, we have to have enough. And we don't know how many people would vote early and how many would be left for later. So it would probably increase the number we'd need a little bit.
Okay.
That may be-
Tom, is it possible to take a look and find out what do we have on a year-to-date basis in that? Because that would
Sure.
have been paid for all by now.
Jim, I've got that. That's 4,800 as of mid-February. So I'm thinking-
4,800, so not to be real picky, but 8,000 seems like a double of that. And I would think that all those expenses would be in by now.
Correct.
So, Tim, since the team's a little unclear as to what's in that line item, can we ask that you come back to us with a little bit more detailed accounting as to
Yeah.
what's in there and what's driving that increase year to year?
You sure can.
And then the other things that down bottom, when we look at the other capital equipment is up. There was nothing in 22. Desks, chairs, there was nothing in 22. And then all of a sudden we're jumping up to 10,000. IT hardware, 10,000. Other equipment, 10,000. 3,000 for desks, chairs, and we had nothing in 22. Once again, maybe Tom, if we take a look at what do we have year to date in those categories?
For desks and chairs, nothing so far. For other equipment and machinery, we're at 7,000. And IT hardware, 0 so far.
So there's like about $23,000 right there that I think we should earmark and add, and maybe that when we come back to look at that 84 or 8,100, we can also, there's a good possibility we can pick up another 20,000 right here.
I think that's a good point, Jim. So guys, we'll want those line items detailed as well.
I have a question about salary overtime, line item 5120. I'm seeing a 25K in 2022. Is that something that's figured out after the fact, overtime hours? Is that something you guys can come back for later on?
Well, we end up spending a lot of it around election time, and we're much more likely to have more this year because of early voting. We'll have to be open on the weekends to do it under the current proposals. We really can't give you much of a better estimate on some of that stuff. And then again, it may be offset by some state money. I'm sorry we're in the situation where we know so little about what some of these costs are going to be this year, but that's the way it is. And in terms of things like furniture and some other stuff, we often will have to spend it in 1 year when we're required to get something. If we buy some extra computers, which we will need for early voting, we'd need it 1 year. We wouldn't necessarily need more of them the next year. There's a lot of our expenses that are 1 year, and then 2 or 3 years later, some more.
Understood. Just looking for the detail in that.
Certainly.
And totally understand about the overtime. The one thing I'll remind us as a board is while it's in the budget, if that overtime is not needed and not spent at the end of the year, it will move into the general fund. So it's not like we are committing to pay those people right now. We're committing to plan for it. That's all.
Yeah, but we're also trying to get our tax burden down too. So because it goes into the general fund or into the fund balance, that doesn't necessarily make it easier on the taxpayer.
No, it doesn't, but putting everything into contingency doesn't help us either. So
What usually happens is it will end up with an unexpected primary, and that extra money will offset much of those primary costs. The presidential primary, I don't believe, is in the budget. So any of these excess funds basically end up offsetting those costs when they arise. And we know there'll be a presidential primary, but yet it's possible it'll be less than you think. The Republicans almost certainly will have several candidates. The Democrats may or may not.
Okay.
Stuart, just one question. Can you explain the difference between wages and salary temporary and wages and salary part-time?
Oh, well, one is the poll workers.
That's the temporary.
Yeah,
Okay, and part-time?
well, we have people that work more than just at the polls for various things. So, I mean, it's hard to explain, but there'll be several days coming up working on things before, which ends up as a part-time. And we need part-time help from time to time. We just send out our annual canvas recently with 5,000 letters that we have to print and stuff. We do that all in-house. So that, which tends to be cheaper than sending it out for processing.
Stuart, do you ever have interns in your area?
All right. Thank you. Anything else for the Register of Voters?
I have two. And this may have already been added, but into Jim's list is to also review the other contractual services, which went from 2470 to now 6804, and that's been constant over those years. So if we could evaluate that. And then one question on the temporary wages for the poll workers. Is it possible that we can get volunteers?
We do need them to show up. It's kind of hard to, volunteers tend to not be interested in doing that quite so regularly. We can always try.
Maybe we can go to some of the school PTAs and have them be a little army, given that we're trying to save money.
Well, remember, we need to pull them out to train them significantly. There's considerable expertise needed to run a polling place with all the different aspects and all the specialized rules. We can ask people to work for nothing, but it's unlikely to be very successful, I fear. As to the, what was that other expense? I believe that's the cost of servicing the tabulators. It's a one-time contract, basically whatever the company LHS is charging, that's operated on by the state in terms of their arrangement with them. And we pay for our tabulators to be serviced. They're all old, falling apart, need the service, and there'd be no way around paying that. We're going to get new tabulators in a year or two, if we're lucky. And if there's money around in the state, which might cut the servicing efforts down, but these are old and obsolete and falling apart. There's no way around servicing them. We have them, we test them, they seem to be working, and then we send them out to the polls and some of them don't work.
Okay. Thank you. Again, any other comments here before we move to administration?
Nope.
Okay. Let's move to administration then.
The fire department?
Yeah, Ed, that is, administration is the department within the division of the fire.
My apologies, I read the wrong column.
All right. I'm still making that mistake, don't feel bad. So anyway, just to scroll down to the very bottom of firefighting, then we'll pop back up. Grand total of 22.68 requested, recommendation of 22.47 million. And that comes in at a 3.37% increase over the 23 approved, slightly within the 3.5% guidance issued at the beginning of the whole budgeting process. So we will now pop back up to administration. And I see Ed McCabe on, I see Mark Conti, and I see Chief Gatto. So we have all three. Take it away, Jen.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everyone.
Evening, Chief.
Just want to bring to the committee's attention I know we have a pretty large $22 million budget. 88% of that is salaries and overtime and stipends and contractual, like uniform maintenance, longevity, et cetera, things like that, that are by contract have to be paid. We have tried to stay within the pro forma of 2024. And you can go down line by line and you'll see some increases. A lot of that has to do with either like CD Carding, for instance, raised their prices. Prices for uniforms raised their prices. A lot of price increases that are not in our control, as you know, because prices are just going through the roof. All of the utilities, the electric, the water, the gas, the fuels, everything has gone up. So I will answer your questions.
Chief,
Can
first
I-
question.
Excuse me just for a second. Could you address retirement payout? It's a new line item we talked about, and maybe you can explain to everyone what that's for?
Yes, so the retirement payout came through the Henry's recommendation because for years, when somebody retires, a firefighter retires, they're given a severance package, which includes the number of years that they've worked. Do they have any vacation days left or holidays left? They're paid 60 days of sick time by contract. Those numbers are pretty substantial and they're, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 range. And that always came out of the salary. So the suggestion was to put, try to estimate the best that we could as the number of people that might be retiring. And I believe that those numbers, we came up with like 3 people. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, that's what that 190 is. That's where that number came from. It's a projected estimate of any kind of retirement that might come forward. It does not have to come out of the salary account.
In years past, that used to be nested within the salary line when we had to make a payout. So the thought was for greater transparency to spike that out and let's track that going forward so we can identify any trends.
Right, I think in the past, it wasn't budgeted. Because when we do salaries, it's name by name for everyone who's on payroll or for every vacancy that's already been approved. And it was sort of like an October surprise. So I've asked the chief to do the estimate. He had 3 people at $60,000 or $65,000 each. And as the first year, we will start monitoring actual versus budget because it's very hard to budget a line item like salaries when you're throwing in other items in there. By separating it, will be it'll be more easy for us to track it and not to have a surprise. The key with the budget is, yes, we want it as tight as possible, but we want to make sure the funds are available for the necessary expenses that are coming down the pike. And at the same time, the fire department came in under the 3.5%. So I think it's a good budgeting tool. We'll monitor it to see and make sure that the estimates are good, that it's not 2 people or 4 people, that it's not 50,000 or 75,000, but that we get the numbers right. Thank you.
Thanks, Henry. Chief, back up in administration, and if you said it and I missed it, I apologize. The line item for other contractual services at $100,000 for this year with no previous spend?
Yes, so the mayor and the fire commissioners at the beginning of this budget season requested that we go out for a new entry-level exam. And based on the previous exam that we gave almost 3 years ago, it was $85,000. I put in $100,000 this year for a new entry-level exam. So that's where that's why you saw nothing the previous years, and all of a sudden it's $100,000.
And forgive my ignorance, is that exam and the need for a new exam absolutely critical to us, or is that a nice to have item for us? What's wrong with the current exam?
We are at almost 3 years into the exam. We've hired over 28 people, I believe. We now sit today currently with 13 vacancies. We're a possibility of 2 more before the end of April. The mayor just felt, and the commissioners felt, that we pretty much exhausted that list, and they wanted to give a new exam. So it is definitely a need because we have so many vacancies.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, and I just want to add that the chief and the assistant chiefs are working diligently to hire people who are already certified firefighters. So when they come in, they don't need to go to the academy. They're already certified, something that they hadn't done before. We started doing that because we knew that there was going to be a lot of retirees coming up. And again, we need to have an active list of people so we can pull off of that list to hire people if we can't find the certified firefighters.
Okay, thank you.
Does that save us money? Did we have to pay for the academy?
I don't know if we pay for the academy. I don't believe so. Do we, Chief?
We do.
Okay.
It's around almost $8,000 a person to go to the academy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's expensive.
So where is that, Chief?
Okay.
So we should see a reduction in that then, huh?
Well, you're not going to see a big reduction because, for instance, we have 6 people in the fire academy right now, but we're going to hire 8 at the end of May. And
But
only
we
2
don't have, but they don't have to go to the academy though.
6 of them do because they have no firefighting experience. Only 2 we were able to bring over as a lateral. So those people don't have to go. So only 2 out of the 8 do not have to go.
I thought we were hiring all certified guys.
No. We
No,
don't
we-
have,
yeah.
no.
We only hire certified officers when they take a test and they apply for the department. Sometimes it's not an easy thing to bring in other officers from other departments or other firefighters. It's just a matter of who wants to work in Norwalk. And fortunately, we find out that a lot of people do, and we've been able to hire a lot of certified officers, but it's not an endless source of new people.
Okay.
Would it help in, I'm sorry, would it help in recruit, given that there's a lot of time, training, and money savings in hiring experienced firefighters, and I know they're difficult, but is to actually perhaps take some of those savings and make it a sign-on bonus. So we share the costs or we share the savings with the person being hired. And maybe that helps us hire more people.
I think that's been discussed, something we can continue the discussion. To bring in a certified firefighter, it might not be a bad idea, but we can discuss that at the fire commission level.
It's a win-win situation.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for the
Yeah.
fire department?
What's business expense, Chief?
Okay, so while I was waiting, I heard your question at the very beginning. So there's, out of our 8 different sub-accounts, business expense for administration is $4,896. And that includes, so department-sponsored meetings and training classes where we have to offer lunch or refreshments. We do promotional ceremonies in the building downstairs. We have one actually scheduled for March 14th, where we have light refreshments after the swearing-in ceremonies. That is part of the 4896 in the admin account. In 2022, we spent $5,369, so it's a little bit less. And then the other one is in training,
7,500.
right, 7,500. Let me get to the,
And then you had another 1,500 in,
okay. So the 7,500 business expense is for 6,000 of that is to provide meals for the recruits that go to the academy. So we pay them a little stipend to have meals because they're up there 5 days a week. And then there's $1,500 for the training director. When we have promotional exams, we have to provide lunch for the panelists as they come in. That was the difference of 1,500. So that's a 7,500 for that account. Did you say there was another one? I didn't see another one.
no, I said it was, just the three of them comes to about $14,000.
Okay. Yeah, well, like 12 something, right? Mhm.
Yeah. So we can probably cut that back a little bit, huh?
Well, if we're gonna cut anything back, we should do the admin.
Okay.
But I don't know how far back you want to take, like a couple thousand away from it.
It's fine.
Yep.
Okay. In the spirit of, even though we came in under the budget, I'm going to, if I could find it, because I had it written down here. So we have a training tower down on South Smith Street. And we were proposing that we were going to do a safety upgrade, which by putting railings around the roof, and that's $8,000 for that project. It's not absolutely critical that we have it this year. We could put it in for next year if we had to. So if you wanted to take another $8,000, you could take it out of that account.
And which account is that? The training? You talking about business expense training?
No. That's the
The other.
fire training. Yeah, it's under it's under educational.
Yep.
5328.
That's 16.5. We're gonna take that down to,
Tom, could you bring us up to that on the screen?
yep, sorry. So we are right here, 16.5 on educational supplies.
Right. If you want to take 8 away,
So that's now 8,500.
Thank you,
Chief, just a question. You said that's
Yeah.
for railings. You said that's for railings on the tower down at South Smith.
yeah, so
Is that
when
not a safety issue that,
it is, absolutely it is, because there's nothing to stop somebody from falling off the roof.
I
But
really
that
would
sounds
feel
like a
uncomfortable. I would feel uncomfortable taking that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather take your business expense and administration down a little, Chief, and have you keep that number.
Yeah.
okay, let's do that. Let's keep the 8,000. Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. So back to administration. We're now at 48.96. Are we taking that down, say 2,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
28.86 it is.
Chief,
Can
could I
we-
ask a question?
And
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry,
You're a
can we
member.
do something in line item other operating supplies? Number 5329.
Right here. Within administration end? That's what,
Under fire equipment.
okay.
Oh, equipment, okay. Let me see.
It's other operating supplies where in 22 it was $651.
We're looking at this line right here.
Yeah, and in last year it was 672 and now it's 87. So can we take 8,000 from there?
Oh, the reason why there's a big increase there is because all of the software that the mechanics use, which includes a $4,700 new program for tracking a lot of the repairs that they do on the apparatus. So it breaks down to, so we took all of the different subscriptions for different software and put it all under this account now. So you have all data is $1,500. Allison for Allison transmissions are $360. Cummings, which is the motors, are $770. There's another Cummings for $750. NFPA $1,300. $130. The Fleetio, which is that software I just mentioned, for $4,700. All that software comes up to $8,210. And then they added $500 for miscellaneous operating supplies. So that's the difference in that huge jump from $650 to $8,700 now.
And are those one-time software upgrade costs, Chief, or are those going to be costs?
I believe they're yearly. Mark, if you know anything different, let me know.
Yes, Chief, they're annual, those are annual subscriptions. The Fleetio that the chief mentioned is, it's now enabled us to, it's on every apparatus, and every officer can update basically every repair request. Every repair is documented, every fueling is documented, and this is now really going to enable us to really pinpoint costs and repairs and monitor how long equipment's out of service, how long equipment's in service, and where it is actually, whether it's at a vendor, whether it's in the shops. And also, as it also enables us to monitor, we have a lot of different batteries and a lot of, especially with NFPA recommendations, we have a lot of, 10-year lifespans. We can monitor all of this and start getting alerts years in advance that we're soon up for hose, especially we've done a hose program. All of this stuff will be in there. So yeah, that's what the upgrade was for this.
Thank you.
So does any of that have to do with the other repairs and maintenance, which is 5269, which is now 30,000, was 15,000 last year or 2 years ago, 25,000 the year before, now it's up to 30. That's 62 or the 5269 fire equipment.
Okay, let me find it.
This one right here.
Yep, you've got the right line, Tom.
If I may just make a general comment, there's a fair number of other line items in this roster. And so I would query whether or not, if it's not defined and it's just in others, if they could be reviewed and then potentially pared down.
And there happens to be about $17,000 of others.
Yeah, I don't know where the terminology came from. That was way before me. There are a lot of other, you're right. There are a lot of line items.
I think we could be
other.
Ed, if you don't mind, could we ask the chief to come back and I think to go through some of these things? And, particularly everything that's got other on it should be allocated to the right place. I mean, I understand what you said about the software. That should be a software category someplace. And unless it's, we could be here all night long going through what are the other operating supplies? What are the other repair and maintenance, other professional services? It doesn't tell us anything. And I think to me, it gives me the feeling that something could be overlooked or something is being doubled up somewhere. I'm not insinuating that you have doubled anything up here, Chief, but it gets really very, very confusing.
No, and look, in the chief's defense, right, those are some of the object codes in the accounting system that we've used. I think it's legitimate to ask Chief just for what breaks up some of those line items. You can follow that up in an email, Tom, we can get from the chief so we can answer those questions. But I understand how and why you've had to use those object codes. I think it is legitimate to just say, could you provide us with a little bit more accounting as to what's in them?
But I think
Yeah,
it lends itself to misallocation. Like when you just said there was a lot of software but that's going into other equipment. It's not software.
Right, so
The software, it's not software. It's not other equipment, you know?
if I could just
So,
say, in
Go ahead.
the budget comparison book that was delivered to everybody.
Yep.
So you don't have the language, every one of these descriptions in my budget comparison report has language for each one of those that explains what they are, but you don't see it on here. So that's why it's very confusing for your committee, because like, it doesn't say what it is. I understand it doesn't say what it is. Other professional service doesn't say what it is. But if you go to these pages, it explains what they are. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Yeah, you are, Chief, and it's
Are you
bridging
talking
between
about the
terminals.
book, Ed? Is he talking about the book, starting on 275, his section?
Yeah, yes, he is.
Yeah, within the book, all of those are broken down in detail, where like the other professional that you were referring to, yearly pumper testing is 4,500, yearly ladder testing, 5,500. Our Hirsch tool testing is 4,000. All of our lift inspection testing, OSHA mandated in the mechanics, is 2,000 a year. So it is broken down in that book,
Yep.
every one of those categories.
Yep, and we all have that book, folks.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can I-
anything else for the fire department?
Chief, can I ask one more question?
Can I
Yes.
ask you a question, Henry, first? Keeping in mind of that retirement payout, just because we don't know, I realize you just wanted to do that as a record keeper going forward, but couldn't that be a contingency item for us? It doesn't seem like that's a big number there, 200,000.
I don't think it's a contingency. I think it's definite. It's going to come. The question is it 2, 3, or 4 people? And it's almost predictable every year. I don't know who's going to retire, but there are going to be 2 or 3 people. And the problem is it's not budgeted anywhere. It shouldn't be contingency. There are going to be people who retire every year, and the chiefs go through their personnel roster and they make an estimate. I think it's more appropriate to have a separate line item. And as I said, it's the first year we're doing this. After a year, we'll see how the actual numbers come in compared. If that's too high, we'll cut it back down. But what worries me is when we know we're going to have costs and we don't plan for them in the budget. I don't think that's appropriate.
And then the other thing I would add, Ed, is police and fire both have something called the drop, which is a very good indicator of upcoming retirements. It's not perfect, but it gives these guys a 5-year look ahead of what's coming down, what's coming down the road and who has signed up for potential retirement.
Okay.
I'd like to ask this last question. Chief, last year we had a lot of questions about the fees for the fire hydrants from the different taxing districts. And I'm just wondering how you covered that in the budget, knowing there were questions about that. I think the BET asked about getting contracts with defined increases so we could plan better. Could you just let everyone know where we stand on that?
Yes, I work with Tom for the increases. The water companies, they did provide a letter of a 10% increase.
Talking about this line item here.
Yeah, the water, right? Firefighting water. Yep. Okay. Let me see if I have it with me.
Yeah, Chief Gatto had forwarded me that information. We're going to work to come up with a schedule to make sure that the surprises are minimized, if not eliminated. As you can see from over here on the far right-hand side, it's an 11% increase over last year on the ask. So their increases have been averaging about 10%. So we will go back and speak to the commissioners of the 2 districts. And I'd like to open up some more dialogue with those guys. And next time they do have an increase, have them come before you and present the issues.
I think we need something formal. It should be done with the legal department in a contract, not just letter agreements that are surprises. And so it should be formalized, negotiated, reviewed, and approved. I think a letter agreement is nice, what they're telling us they're going to charge. But in any other area of the city, we would look at procurement and say, what are the bids? What can we do? Are there alternatives? And here, it just seems like we are on the receiving end. There's no other alternative, and we just take whatever raises there are. And again, I apologize if I'm misspeaking on behalf of the BET, but I think the more formal we can get in this, it will just be better for everyone.
We've stated that in multiple meetings before, and I think you're right, Henry. So let's make sure we deliver on that this year.
Absolutely.
Obviously, they've made progress, but I think we're not there yet. And we should try to get all the way to sign contracts like we have with every other service in every other department.
Agreed. Okay. Any other questions or comments for fire department?
I have two comments. One, I agree with Mr. Dashwood trying to get a little bit in this, because really these line items are a little bit confusing. But on the other hand, I would like to applaud the chief with saying that I think the fire department does a great job and really sleep better knowing that we have this professional firefighting force here in Norwalk. And having lost my garage in 2016 in a catastrophic fire, I saw the guys in action, and they're tremendous. So, so it is money well spent, I think, from the city standpoint.
Thank you, Ann, and well said.
I'd like to add one more point.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one more point. As CFO and in charge of the controllership function as well, I have a firm philosophy. Accounting should follow operations. We don't say, here are our accounts, fit your stuff into our accounts. If you don't have account line items, and that goes for Ed, Mark, and the chief, if it's not describing the activity or the cost appropriately, let's talk to the controller. Let's set up the right accounts that captures what's really going on, because accounting should help communicate what's going on in financial terms. You should not have to force fit your costs into a list and chart of accounts if they don't work for you. So software should be in software. And if you have a special line item called apparatus repair and upkeep or database, we'll create it for you, you know? So I'm just saying, don't feel that you have to be hamstrung. We will work with you so that you could put it in the.
You hit mute, Henry.
Hit mute. You were brilliant, though.
I'm much more brilliant when I'm silent. So all I'm saying is, we as controllers, accountants are here to serve you so that you can communicate your information properly to your audiences. And don't be afraid to say, I think we need some more categories. We will work to try to accommodate you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Very
it.
good.
I didn't think that was possible, but I just thought I had to go by these titles that are on here already. But okay.
I only do it for you, Chief. No other department. Don't tell me.
There you go. All right. Thank you again,
I'll keep it
Chief.
quiet.
Thank you again, Chief. Shall we move to our last department tonight, police?
Thank you, everybody, for
So
your time.
how are we gonna leave the fire department?
Do you still need me to provide any descriptions of anything for you?
Again, I would ask us as a board to look at the detailed book that we have at our disposal, and then if we still have questions, let's get them to Tom and we'll get them back to the chief.
Okay.
Yeah, from my notes, the only change on fire was the business expense and administration from 4896 down to 2896.
Correct.
That's it.
Pending again that we get to that everybody's comfortable with the detail behind everything that's in the other line items, which are detailed out in our book.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief and Assistant Chiefs.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Have a good evening, Chief. All right, police.
I see Chief Walsh. waiting patiently. Apologies for another late night. We'll drop down to the bottom line because it's a solid story. One of the biggest departments in the city coming in at exactly, it's actually 3.5%. Where is it? There we go, all the way down at the bottom. So 28, request of 28.466 million, recommended 28.466 when a nearly $30 million department comes in right at the guidelines. We take a look at that with favorable eye.
I guess while Tom scrolls, Chief, one of the first questions I had was just when you look at the salary increase in uniform patrol of almost $1 million, what's driving that?
Raises and going back to manpower. Right now, we're fully staffed at 181. So that'll be patrol raises and contractual raises.
And so we were understaffed in FY23. Is that why that number is lower?
Yes. We're back to full staff. We had shortages in manpower for the past 2 years.
Okay.
I did have a breakdown of some of the major drivers of the increase in budget increases, if you want me to go through that.
Yes, please.
Okay, the first initiative is the school crossing guard program. Out of the efficiency study, one of their major recommendations was privatization of the school crossing guard program.
Chief Waltz, if I could just interrupt real quick, if you have the account number, I know it's handy. I can scroll down to that so everybody can see what we're talking about. I don't have that memorized.
It's under the school crossing guards, it's under community services. If you want to scroll down to community services, right?
Community police?
Yeah, other professional services. So I can explain that with a couple. That's 2 items I need to explain.
Okay, right here, 623. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So both the school crossing guard program is run out of our community services division. It has historically been for years. We managed the school crossing guard program. One of the major recommendations out of the efficiency study was the privatization of our school of crossing guards. Last year, we were budgeted at 184. At the last minute, Norwalk Public Schools increased our locations by 3 school crossing intersections. So we actually had to go out and hire 3 additional school crossing guards last year, in which it raised the price to about $240,000. So probably in August, we had to go back and get more money. So right now, we're averaging at about $240,000. So 184 was what was budgeted, but in reality, it's about 240. The problem with our current school crossing guard program is that most of these individuals are older and retired. And they work for about an hour and a half in the afternoon, an hour and a half maybe in the morning. So when the weather is inclement, if it's too hot, too cold, or they're not feeling well, they're always calling out sick. So we have no replacements for them. We have no civilian school crossing guard replacements. So what we end up doing every morning and every afternoon, we end up pulling officers from the road from our minimum staffing to cover all the intersections for the school crossing guards. So we're averaging about 2 to 3 in the morning and 2 to 3 in the afternoon. And a lot of times in the afternoon, they go past 3:30, 4 o'clock shift change. So we're paying overtime. So if we add those real costs to that, that's probably another $20,000 to $30,000 in hidden costs that we're paying in overtime for school crossing guards every single day. So we went through an RFP process and we found a company who will completely privatize the school crossing guard program. They manage their employees. They have their own employees. They train them. They equip them. They replace them if they have someone calling out sick. Right now, we cover 19 locations for Norwalk Public Schools in the morning and the afternoons. So that initiative is $386,000. And probably an increase from budgeted of $202,000. It's at times untenable, especially in bad weather. We're pulling 3 to 4, sometimes 5 officers off a shift during day shift, and it always happens at shift change, either between 7 and 8 a.m. and 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. So operationally, it's really not an efficient program that we've been running. The school crossing guards just don't want to come to work when they're not feeling well, the weather's bad.
Okay. So Chief, if I understand that would be $300,000+ of the other professional services line. What's the other $300,000?
It is the behavioral health unit. Last year, we partnered with Recovery Network, which is they're based out of Stanford, and some of the new programs that have are like the most modern practices for law enforcement is embedding social workers in the police department. In the past 2 or 3 years, we've had a large increase of community members that we're responding to that are in need, emotionally disturbed persons, suicidal individuals. So a lot of the new initiatives in law enforcement across the nation are embedding social workers within the police department. And right now, we went live with that program in October using grant money provided by the city. And right now we have a full-time social worker and a part-time social worker. So they're in our building and they're responding with an officer assigned to the behavioral health unit. And what they're doing is they're giving another approach. And our ultimate goal with this program is to slowly introduce a program where law enforcement is not the first responders to people in need. They're clinicians. And that has been quite successful in other areas of the United States. As a matter of fact, Stanford Police Department was the first police department in this area to go live with this program almost 3 years ago. And they see a 40% decrease in officer response to people in emotional need. And unfortunately, sometimes these people it creates a use of force situation. And they found out through studies that clinicians are better trained and suited for dealing with people in emotional distress. And also at the same time, they're dealing with a lot of repeat customers. So what they can do is provide alternative phone resources. So if they need assistance, once again, they're not dialing 911. They're dialing 211 and they're getting the sources that they need, the resources that they need. So it's been a quite effective program. And Recovery Network is a good program, and that cost is right now for $237,000 for last year, for next year's budget.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question about the crossing guard. So you said that's private. Is that like someone that you guys outsource? Do you hire someone?
Yes, excuse me. Yeah, we went through a whole RFP process last year, and we had 3 companies come in and present their proposals. And a company was called All City. They won. They had the best RFP. And so they come in and it's completely privatized. So it gets taken out of our hands and our responsibility for replacing the school crossing guards every single day. I did call a few other municipalities that have privatized school crossing guards, and they say it's a wonderful initiative.
Commissioner, how do you determine what the schools need for crossing guards? How is that? Is there a study done? Does the school tell you, or?
Yes, Norwalk Public Schools actually has a transportation director. So I forget her name at this time, but she controls all the busing and the walkers. So she breaks it all down by numbers, and they monitor this stuff. So like last year, they increased it, and we're probably going to see with the new South Norwalk School at least 2 more intersections that we're going to have to cover. So as we increase Norwalk Public Schools, there's more services that the police department or the school crossing guards are going to have to.
So that's looked at periodically, because sometimes patterns change, and if there's no kids walking, I mean, just wondering if that's reviewed periodically at each school.
It is. Sergeant Galino, who works in community services, works directly with, and she liaisons a lot with the transportation director. And we have, I think, in past years, reduced 1 or 2, but more keep popping up at the request of Norwalk Public Schools.
And
it's a process. Okay.
Yep. Okay. But you do have input into that process, yes?
Yes. But the sergeant assigned to the community services division.
Thank you.
The liaison with Norwalk Public Schools.
Thank you. Didn't mean to derail you.
Chief Walsh, if I may add, I think I heard this from Mickey some time ago, an interesting point. The soft savings on this, meaning that outsourcing the crossing guards, you don't have uniformed city patrol payroll folks outside on overtime, risking a workman's comp claim. So it's difficult to quantify that, obviously, but certainly lowers the risk for that type of thing.
Yes, to your point, there's a lot of soft costs that we can't calculate with the app officers out there.
Right.
Replacing the school crossing guards. The third major initiative is the body cams, dash cams, and tasers. Where they're state mandated, the body cams and the dash cams.
Sorry, Chief, where are we on this? What account?
If you could scroll down.
Down? Property.
Mickey, could you help me out with what line item is that? It would be under accreditation.
I think it's in 49. I think you passed it, Tom. Go back up.
Once again, other professional services?
Hang on.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, that's
So we're talking 460 right there.
Yeah, 348,844. Most of that's for cloud storage. As you know, we're state mandated to have dash cams. We just, in this past fiscal year, installed over 55 dash cameras in the car. And we have 181 officers that all have been assigned their own personal body cam, and they use it all the time. And the amount of storage that this creates of all the videos that we're storing in the cloud, which is a huge driver of all the cost in regards to our Axon cost. And plus we need to replace them. So we just went with a 4-year contract. There was over close to $108,000 in savings by signing a long-term contract. And part of that contract is upgrade of the body cams, which are about 4 years old, to the latest generation body cam, and upgrade to our electronic control weapon, what's commonly referred to as the taser.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the next item is that's driving cost up is emergency services overtime. NOAC, I guess very fortunately, has become in southwestern Connecticut a very popular place. In the past years, Homeland Security has highlighted what they consider soft targets. Those are fairs, festivals, road races. I have a list here: the Pride Festival, Oyster Festival, Nice Fest, the Sono Arts. You know, this past year we did 4 tree lightings, the parades, the graduations that we do. All those are identified as soft targets according to Homeland Security, where we've seen tragedies occur across the United States in the past United States. So what we're doing is we're adding an extra layer of security by specifically trained officers with explosive ordnance detection dogs, higher trained emergency services officers for not only the deterrence, but also detection of any threats. It is a profile of security that we've added, and most of that money has been coming out of patrol overtime. It's a very successful program. It's a program that's being run in many communities, not only in Connecticut, but across the United States. And NOAC is very successful in attracting all these programs that probably starting in April, that'll run all the way through October. So that's the driver of all that overtime, up to $120,000.
Wouldn't that be passed on to the vendors through their costs and their pricing of, for you charge? Don't they pay for your security?
Yes, this is the security that the city provides on top of the officers that they hire, because what they'll do is they'll hire 2 or 3 officers through the permit process for traffic control and pedestrian control and things like that. But there are just some certain threats in America that we can't ignore, intelligence that we can't ignore in regards to soft targets and vehicle-borne issues and things like that, which really started to, you could see some of the tragedies that have occurred in the past 3 or 4 years across America. And that's why we're adding this extra layer of security out there. And traditionally, we've been taking it out of the patrol division, and it's been sort of unfunded. And it doesn't look like any of these festivals or tree lightings. For an example, we went from 1 tree lighting to 4 tree lightings this year. Every single tree lighting we covered with a contingent of officers, an added layer of security in the perimeter. And it's very welcome that you should see the the community support and recognition that they give the officers while they're there. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments for?
Yeah, just one other small item on line 5421, building and office rentals went from 3,022 to 25,000 projected for next year. What's that line item?
Tom, could you bring that up, please?
5421 is the line item.
What department is that, Troy?
Building and office rentals. It's on page 16, sorry.
Okay.
Is that, it says under vehicle maintenance. So
Vehicle
like,
maintenance.
is this housing for the cars or?
Looks right here, right?
Mick, would you be able to explain that further?
Do you got it, Tom?
Yeah, right here.
Hang on, this is the lease fee for the Yankee Doodle garage.
Yes.
It's for the confiscated vehicles. We never had a place to put them before. And if you remember, they were all over our lot and we didn't have the room. So now we leased, I think it's a floor of the garage to house the vehicles. And in the past, we only had a small piece of it. Now we've got a larger part in the garage.
Yes, that's it. So we seize cars federally, and we're required under specific guidelines for storage requirements like fencing and video. So we actually rented a specific area of the Yankee Doodle garage on the top floor, and we fenced it in, and we have video, and we check it weekly. And that's where we are seized vehicles for cases, long-term homicide investigations and things like that, drug seizures, other seizures that we do. We have to have at least 18 to 20 cars.
We're paying the Yankee Doodle garage. I mean, is that place empty half the time? I mean, are you taking spaces that they're selling, which I'd like to know that. That would be great, but.
That was the arrangement that, as a matter of fact, when I was a lieutenant in special services, that was a part of the arrangement that at the time traffic and parking had given to us when we initially came up with this idea.
Well, I would just think we can go back to the garage to see if those are empty spaces. I don't understand why we're paying leasing those spots, but you know.
Yeah, I think it's a good and important side conversation. Understand why it's in your budget, but I think it is fair to go back to the parking authority because we're playing left pocket, right pocket here. We're being silly with ourselves.
I'll have a conversation with Mr. Travers tomorrow to see if we can do something.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think we just need to have a little explanation of some of the sundry items on special services. It's 15,000 for sundry. Detectives have 5,000 on sundry.
Yes, that is sundry money is money that is paid for criminal investigations. So what that is, that's a cash account that is managed and audited by our internal affairs division. And that is money, unfortunately, not unfortunately, but we use for information, doing from a confidential informant process. It's always been there.
How about for the K-9? We have other for $6,500 in K-9.
Page are we, Jim?
It's, I knew you were going to ask me that. It's under
emergency services.
There it is. I got it.
The dogs are a big expense. Currently, we have 6 dogs. We have 4 handlers, and we have 2 handlers that have 2 dogs. One is a patrol dog, and one is an EOD, emergency explosive ordnance dog. And there's a lot of high maintenance, and there's a lot of cost with the dogs in regards to veterinarian storage at the when these handlers go on vacation. We're responsible for putting the dogs in the kennel. We did try putting them at the dog pound a few years ago, and one of the dogs got sick. So they're quite an investment with all the money and training that we've put into these dogs. So we actually pay for the boarding, and we pay for their care. and we pay for all their food. So there's a lot of soft hidden costs with the canine program.
So in other and a business expense, we've got $10,000, a little over $10,000. You know, I think Henry's mentioned this before, we ought to put that in a correct category, not other or business expense. If it's I don't know what other operating supply, you know, whatever it is, you know, if it should be, maybe it's rent for kennels or whatever it is, because it just begs the question.
What
Chief,
what line item specifically are you asking
So
about?
it's in 5273 and 5286.
All right.
Chief, if you want me to drill down on those items for Mr. Freyer, I'd be happy to. There's three.
No, I'm not saying that you have to drill down on it. I don't care what the details are. It's not a lot of money in the great scheme of things. You know, we've just talked about hundreds of thousands of dollars you're spending on things that save people's lives. I'm just saying that we ought to categorize that in something other than business expense. It should be specific. And Henry also mentioned that if you don't have a category for it, then come to him. If it's kennels or if it's dog food or whatever the heck it is, you know, let's call it that.
Understood.
Okay. And on the other hand, is there anything that we can give up there? A couple of $1,000 here or there?
I think that would.
You take that as a no or yes?
I'd have to drill down. I'd probably have to sit down with Mickey and go through this with a fine tooth comb.
Not going to break the budget.
There could be area.
Yeah, again, I'd like us to be careful about where we focus people's time. This is a $28 million budget that came in as planned. We've identified some good reasons for the increases. I understand that we are trying to find every penny to benefit our tax holders, but I also think that there is a reality of time and return on investment for those things. And I don't know that, you know, switching to a lesser cost dog food is really going to make a material difference to the
I don't think that was my point at all. I think that we're trying to find out what's in these categories. And as an example, other is kind of a nebulous number. I have no idea why we would be spending nearly $10,000 on other things for the canine unit. So I get what you're saying, Ed, but I think
just to give you an example.
No. I don't need an example of what it is. I understand exactly what you're doing. I'm trying to set, you know, there are bigger things in other this, other that, and we've gone through this whole conversation with the fire department. So let's leave it at that. I think this is the last department we have tonight. I'm satisfied. I think the police department does a great job. I've always been really impressed with the how they explain what they're spending money on. It's to the point, and there's not a lot of you always have the answers when we ask the question. So I'm perfectly confident with what we got here.
Yep.
So,
any other comments?
Yeah, Ed, I have just one real quick one, dovetailing on Troy's question about whether vendors pay or the city pays. Chief Walsh, the patrol officers at Sono Collection, is that something that falls under roll call and we get reimbursed for that, or is that on us?
The officers at the Sono Collection extra security detail are paid by the Sono Collection.
Got it. All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I would just compliment Mickey. I'm sorry, Ann. I just want to compliment Mickey. It's like landing the lunar module at 3.5%. And whenever he comes to Tom or my office, he says, I gave it the office. So thank you all, because I think, you know, you got the largest budget and you guys do a good job of some departments go up a little, some departments come down, but you get the overall mission. We appreciate the very good relationship we have.
Ann, I'm sorry, you wanted to make a comment?
I would echo Henry's comment. I would also echo Jim's comment about trying to figure out aggregating all these others because perhaps there is something in there. 2, I think the privatization of the school crossing guards makes a lot of sense, and I applaud that type of initiative. 3, on the K-9 unit, and this is just an aside story, I worked at Goldman Sachs, and John Thane, who was the COO, for years had these explosive detecting dogs that people gave him a real hard time because they were expensive. They were invaluable in September 11th in trying to find whether there were other devices, but also, most importantly, discovering people who were buried under the rubble. And similar to the fire department, I think the police department in Norwalk does a tremendous job. And you're bookended by 2 very different types of the Darien police and the Westport, but you guys handle some really tough stuff. And again, I sleep easier knowing that the Newark Police Department is behind us. So thank you.
Thank you
Well
for the
said again.
comments.
Well said again. All right. Again, I think we're closed on police. Thank you. Before we close for the night, Henry and Tom, I think this is going to be a recurring theme, so I'll indicate it now. If not for these reviews, but going forward, if we could look at each department's other line items, and to Henry's earlier point, make sure we've got the right budget codes for future planning purposes so that these don't become dumping grounds or areas of lack of focus. That would be something I'd ask the finance department to do with each one of the departments going forward, ensuring that they have the right accounting codes available to them so that we don't have this continual conversation.
And also have people know what their business expenses are. That was a great point Jim brought up earlier this evening.
Yep, fair point.
I think the analysis and the in-depth questioning was excellent. I don't think we can change the line items now.
Not for now. No, it's a going forward statement.
But the point is, we're focusing on the numbers now. And when Tom and Agnes and I sit down with every department, we try to get as much as we can an understanding of the department and where they're spending their money. But I think you're right. It sets a certain tone and it's an attitude and an approach. We don't want things inadvertently put into catch-all categories that lose their character and then we don't identify and understand them. Other makes sense for a lot of small different items, but when they can be categorized more accurately, we should do it. And we should question those expenses as well. The good news is we're coming down to the short straws. We're doing a very good job on the big items. We've been doing that for several years. And now we're going even to the smaller items. So I think we're getting more thorough and more rigorous. And we will continue to work forward with the BET in trying to get even more efficiency out of this.
Thank you very much, Henry. And with that, I think we can close tonight. We're back at it tomorrow at 5:30 p.m.
Yeah, Ed, that's, I was going to just remind people, it's a little bit earlier tomorrow night because of the Finance and Claims Committee meeting, so we will meet at 5:30. I will send out a similar package either later tonight, if I can find some caffeine, or first thing tomorrow morning, along with the headcount adjustments. And I will reach out to all the attendees and ask them to be prepared to speak in detail on their other stories and their business expenses.
Tom, I would
Yes.
just point out, the finance and claims starts at 7, so we really are limited to 90 minutes. So we should pace ourselves looking for the bigger issues, because at 7 o'clock, some of us just have to disappear to finance tomorrow night.
Yep.
I see, human relations, youth services, both pretty small, mostly economic and community development. And that will have a few headcount requests, but I'll keep us on pace.
Yep, between Tom and I, we'll do our best.
So the other thing I was thinking about is it on Thursday night? We have the Board of Ed at the end of what looks like a full schedule.
Yeah, it's next Wednesday.
Would it make sense to move that to a separate Night.
Those, the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 5 items on that are the grants. Those usually go very, very quickly.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so, it's just one line item. They have a little backup for it. Most of them are similar stories to previous years, except for the redevelopment agency. That one is going to be new this year, but the rest of them are pretty straightforward. Very minimal.
The other thing is, I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but what night is that again?
That's
What day?
Wednesday the 15th at 6:30.
15th at
What,
6:30.
the 15th?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so if we don't go through those grants quickly, we got to table them because we need to give plenty of time for the Board of Ed.
I would suggest we start that meeting with the Board of Ed, and if we have to then move the grants to a follow-up meeting, we do it that way, Tom.
Okay. I was wondering whether we could even put it off till the following week.
Meaning the Board of Ed or the
I don't
grant?
think so. No, we're gonna bump into our own public hearing, guys.
That's the 22nd.
Yeah, I know. But we're gonna bump
I'm
into
talking
that.
about like Monday or Tuesday that week.
I would encourage us not to try and get this done again.
Well, I'd say the Tuesday, the 14th is us, finance. That one should go pretty quick. We could try to transition some of the grants folks over to Tuesday.
That may be a good idea, Tom. Let's look at that so we can dedicate as much of the 15th as possible to Board of Ed.
And it's also good to have the Board of Ed a week before the deadline, because if there are open issues.
It'll take
and
that long to
them
come back.
You don't want them to have to come back within a day. You want to give them the time to get the right responses and give yourselves time to fully ask the questions.
Absolutely.
I have a question. When do we speak on the items that were tabled today?
That's the last meeting on Monday, March 20th at 6:30, Kendrick.
Okay, thank you.
At that point, Kendrick, we look at all those items, we agree what we're gonna put in contingency, what we'll put back in the budget, or what we'll just kill.
Understood.
And I think last year we had maybe a dozen or so items.
Yep.
Probably took about an hour.
Yep.
Okay.
So far after night one, we have one.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody.
Well, get some rest because we're back at it tomorrow, everybody. See you then.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Have a
Yeah,
good
bye-bye.
Bye.
tomorrow.